this story about an exploding Samsung Galaxy A21 on an Alaska Airlines flight. It's the old, phone battery bursting into flame story. Yeah. Obviously, they had the Note 7 issue a couple of years back. This is just one phone, obviously, one example, so that's not really indicative of a trend or anything. I think it's just that they picked up, it's a Samsung Galaxy phone, and that's happened before, so let's post about it. But it does actually, there was another odd thing about it, that the phone was in the cargo hold. Not sure why they stored it there. It's their second phone, maybe. Were they carrying their iPhone on the flight or something, because or whatever? Very curious, but obviously, highlights an element of danger with these devices. Now, obviously, from an engineering standpoint, there's a lot of work that goes into making sure that a battery remains stable in a device. I mean, you don't really see, countless examples of smartphone batteries exploding here, there, and everywhere. So you would think 99.9% of the time they've got it exactly, spot on. But I think it also sort of highlights it doesn't sound like it's fascinating or, headline material, but the science of actually making all of this work, the engineering to make it, the engineering to make it work so it doesn't explode, given that the batteries can inherently be unstable if not set up properly, is actually the part that I actually find the most interesting out of all of this.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no way we'll ever know, but it could well be the Android operating system that ignited it while sending data back in transit. But and anyone who's got an Android phone knows that that's quite possible. The other thing that's really interesting, and you're right, these batteries typically are very safe, and the problems that Samsung had with the Note several years ago now, only got engineers to build better batteries. So it is very rare, but from a personal experience, very recently, a friend of mine's house burnt down. A Bluetooth speaker installed under the veranda out the back burst into flame, and basically went straight up into the roof cavity and burned his whole house down. So, wow. It's rare, but we have a lot of these devices around now, and I think, really at every opportunity we should be powering them down. I know we like to have everything instant on or in standby, but after that story, I'm not so sure.
I'm also wondering if there's a component of this, if you're buying, your $5 devices off of Amazon or something, or whatever, that may not be perfectly tuned, shall we say, for proper use. You might want to be careful with that sort of stuff too.
Well, we know certainly from the early days, Ben, with cameras and then, buying supplementary battery packs for them. I remember buying a whole lot of cheaper batteries that, for a few months operated as well as the Sony or the Panasonic battery that would come with the camera, but within 6 months would literally go off and not really hold charge, and would leak or probably burst into flame if you used them too much. So there's a lot to think about there, and I think people always have to be mindful with the more and more devices we have that are powered by battery or sitting in standby modes, that there's always a risk of these things happening. And these things can happen very quickly and without warning. So, you can imagine the danger this presents on a flight or even if you're in your own home.
Another aspect that I think is quite interesting with this too is it's not that progress isn't standing still or anything. That there's still work trying to develop alternatives to the old lithium-ion battery, potentially using different kinds of electrolytes, etc., to see if that will actually work. Obviously, they still haven't come up with a viable commercial I guess, a commercially viable mainstream alternative yet. Otherwise, I'm sure every manufacturer would be adopting it pretty quickly, particularly if it holds, a longer charge, or a charge that lasts longer than what lithium-ion batteries do. I'm sure that at some stage there'll be some sort of revolution in that regard. Well, they'll present it as a revolution whenever it eventually ends up happening. But for the time being, it's something that we're still going to be using them, and it may not sound like an interesting sort of thing to research, but it might be worth looking up how these batteries operate, and to understand how best to look after them, I guess.
Absolutely, and we've covered this before, but look, just as a very quick summary, lithium batteries are fantastic for any device up to the size of a laptop. Very reliable. There are other options for lithium besides lithium ion, but they're still not commercially available, but I'm sure they'll become available in the next 4 to 5 years, as we're seeing the sort of storage capacity and power of these batteries ramp up. Above the size of a laptop, even though we're using lithium, it's not the optimum material. But we'll have to wait and see. I think there's just so much technology and investment already in lithium that it's still preferred for car batteries and for solar or photovoltaic storage. But it's not actually the best battery on those larger sort of, kits. So anyway, something we'll see more of in the future.